Welcome. My name is Nicole Kelly. I work for UBC Sauder, the Robert H. Lee Graduate School, and I'm really excited to be hosting another one of these sessions today. Really excited to be able to welcome Kailin Burns, who I'll pass the stage, so to speak, over to in just a moment, to be able to share with you some tips and tricks and really great advice as you think about preparing for writing the GMAT or the GMAT Focus. And I'll also have a little bit of information at the end of the presentation about UBC Sauder's graduate management education program, so I can go through a few reminders, as well as if you have any questions for either myself or Kailin, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll probably save some time near the end to verbally answer those, but I can always pop in and see what I can answer in the meantime. So welcome everyone, and I hope you're doing well, whatever time of day it is where you are. So let me just move through here. As I mentioned, myself and Kailin will be hosting the session today, and I'll pass it over to Kailin in just a moment. I'd like to also do a land acknowledgement. So here, in terms of my location, we are located on the UBC Sauder campus. And so we are located at UBC Sauder. Let me start again. and our campus is at the Point Grey campus. So we're situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam people. We do want to acknowledge that many of you are joining from different places all around the world, and that there are traditional owners and caretakers of those lands that we would like to acknowledge as well. In terms of just doing best practices, I mentioned this at the beginning, but this is largely presentation based with time for questions. So if you could just keep yourself muted, feel free to put your video on if you want. It's always nice to see some smiling faces, and we'd be happy to answer those. And you're welcome to use the chat function as well. I will pass it over to Kailin.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. As Nicole shared, my name is Kailin Burns, and I work on behalf of GMAC with all of our Canadian partners. And I'm really excited to speak with you today around the GMAT, what you should know about the GMAT exam, and provide you with some tips and tricks. Today's conversation is going to focus primarily on the GMAT that is currently available to candidates globally in the market. As you may or may not be aware, we have released the GMAT Focus Edition, and test administration for that exam will begin on November the 7th globally. We will sunset the current GMAT, as you know it, on January 31st, 2024, but not to worry, of course, your GMAT scores are always valid for 5 years. So without further ado, let's get started. So if you're serious about business, which I believe you are because you're joining us here today, I wanted to just kind of give you an overview of how the GMAT came to be. The GMAT was created nearly 70 years ago when the top 9 leading business schools in the US came together and recognized that they needed an assessment for business programs, similar to those that they had at medical school and law school. It is truly an assessment that has been created by business schools to help them discover and select candidates. It's used and trusted by more than 7,700 business and management programs worldwide, and it can truly help you demonstrate your commitment to business school. It also is an assessment that measures the skills that are in demand by today's employers. And if you're thinking about a career in either consulting or even iBanking, your GMAT score may help you get into the role of your dreams. Some other quick things to keep in mind is that I like to think of the GMAT as less of an assessment and more like a pre-MBA boot camp. So some of you may just be recently out of school, you may still be in school, or you may be several years removed from school. And practicing and preparing for the GMAT can help you really tackle those time management skills and help you identify the skills in quant and verbal and data that you may need to brush up on a little bit before you get into the classroom. And the GMAT can help you do that. Of course, I don't want us to get hyper-focused on just the GMAT score, though. There are so many parts that go into, as I like to think of it, the application pie for business school. So you can see here, the admissions committee is going to be looking at your leadership skills, your motivation. What is motivating you to pursue a business school degree? But also, what's your motivation after you receive that degree? We're going to be looking at your current job skills and background, those extracurricular activities, those things that make you, you. And then, of course, they're going to look at your academic aptitude. So your undergrad GPA, as well as, of course, that GMAT score. But again, just one of the many pieces that are going to take place in that application process. And we also like to look at that the GMAT can help compensate for those areas that may not be as strong as you like in your application. Maybe you don't have as many years of work experience as the program is requiring, or perhaps your undergrad GPA is not as strong as you'd like it to be. A strong GMAT can help compensate for those areas that may not be as strong. But also keep in mind that through the application process, the schools that you are considering will also be looking at other ways to get a sense of who you are and what you'll bring to the classroom. They'll be looking at intangibles such as soft skills, your letters of recommendations, and your essays. Assessments can benefit both you, the candidate, and schools, right? So as I mentioned, think of it as more like a pre-MBA bootcamp. But also think of it as that it can help you prepare, it can help you stand out and highlight the quality depending on how you score. Most importantly, it helps you prepare for business school. And in some instances, it may even help you qualify for scholarships. These are all great questions to ask the admissions committee at the programs that you're interested in applying to. So let's go ahead and break down the GMAT. As I mentioned today, we're going to be talking about the GMAT that is currently available to all candidates globally, both in a test center and online. Here's the current GMAT exam structure. You can see that your total score is going to be 200 to 800 point range. You can see that there are 4 sections. There's the analytical writing for 30 minutes, integrated reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and statistical reasoning. Please keep in mind that your 200 to 800 point score range is going to be based on your performance in quantitative and verbal reasoning. You can also see that you'll have the option for 2 8-minute breaks if you'd like to pursue those as well. Several years ago, based on candidate feedback, we introduced select section order. We can't make the GMAT easier, but if we can make the experience for you, the candidate, a little less stressful, that is our #1 goal. And so due to candidate feedback, we introduced this feature where you can choose the order in which you take the exam. You can take it in the standard order, which is starting off with AWA, or perhaps you want to get quant out of the way first, or verbal. You can see that you still have the optional 2 8-minute breaks available to you, and that your score will still be that 200 to 800 point range based on your performance in quant and verbal. There's no advantage of taking it one order over the other, and we do not notate on your score report if you took advantage of the select section order. The first section that I'd like to speak about, of course, is our analytical writing section, also known as AWA. With AWA, you're presented with an argument that you're not going to be familiar with, and you have 30 minutes to respond to this argument. This is what we're looking for here, is your ability to respond to something that you don't have a lot of knowledge about, and to do it in a concise manner. We are not looking for any flowery or verbose language. So do keep that in mind, and you want to be able to make sure that you finish writing this in 30 minutes. And this is the only part of the assessment that is scored both by a human reader and a computer. We'll then move into integrated reasoning, affectionately known as IR. You'll also have 30 minutes to complete integrated reasoning as well. There's going to be 4 types of questions that you'll be exposed to in this section: multi-source reasoning, table analysis, as well as graphics interpretation and 2-part analysis. This is really looking at you taking the skills that you're probably using in your day-to-day role and applying it to these questions. The exception with integrated reasoning is that this is the only part of the GMAT where you have access to a calculator. So I just want to draw your attention to right here. It's an on-screen drop-down calculator. It's very simple. I encourage you when you're preparing for the GMAT, but this is the only time that you use the calculator. So avoid the use of the one on your phone or even a freestanding calculator. From there, we'll move into quantitative reasoning, also known as quant. You know, there's this myth out there that in order to be successful in quant, you have to have amazing mathematical skills, and that's just not the case. If you successfully passed secondary math, you're going to do just fine in the quant section. And what we're looking for here in quant is that your ability to answer what's being asked of you and not just show your ability to do the mathematical problem. So let's just take a look here. We have a problem-solving question. The price of lunch for 15 people was $207, including a 15% gratuity for service. You're being asked, what was the average price per person, excluding the gratuity? Now, if we had the opportunity to do this in person today, I would ask someone to raise their hand. And typically, before I was even done reading the question, a hand would be up in the audience. And the answer that would be provided would be very evident that that candidate just took the $207 and divided by 15 and didn't exclude the gratuity. So make sure that you're answering for what's being asked of you. You'll also be exposed to data sufficiency questions. My biggest piece of advice with data sufficiency questions is that you become really familiar and really comfortable with the meaning of each possible answer. Every data sufficiency question has the exact same 5-question bank answer. And so if you can understand what these mean, it will help you move through those questions that much more quickly. And finally, you'll have verbal reasoning. Within verbal reasoning, you'll have 3 types of questions. There will be a reading comprehension passage. And really what this is, it's a larger passage and you're being asked to solve for, you can see here, what is the author of this passage primarily concerned with? My piece of advice here now is when you're prepping for the GMAT, is your strategy going to be to read the entire passage and then go to the answers, or review the prospective answers and then try to pull them out of the passage? Whichever method you use in your prep strategy, make sure you carry that through on test day as well. You will also have critical reasoning questions. Again, small passage and you're needing to solve for. Again, think of how what's your strategy going to be here? You're going to read the short passage and then go to the answers, or review the answers first and then try to solve for it after reading the passage. And lastly, you will have sentence correction questions as well. With sentence corrections, pretty straightforward. So there'll be a word or several words underlined, and you need to replace it with the correct word or phrase provided to you in the answer bank. So let's talk a little bit about, let's take a step back and let's think about where we've already come from first. So I've shared with you how the GMAT was created and came to be. We've also talked about the value of the GMAT in the application process, as well as the value of assessments in the admission process to graduate business programs. And then, of course, we've taken the time now to review each section and question type. What I'd like to do now is walk you through the process if you're considering writing the GMAT either online or in a test center. And so for those of you that are considering writing the GMAT online, this part's for you. Most importantly, you're going to make sure that you have a valid MBA.com account, and you can create a free account at MBA.com. Once you do that, you'll be able to log in, you'll be able to go ahead and register for your scheduled GMAT appointments, as well as manage any past exams as well. You'll also be able to see your score, where your scores are available. Some things to keep in mind when you're writing or you're considering writing the GMAT, whether online or in a test center. You may pursue the GMAT up to 5 times in 12 months and up to 8 times in a lifetime. And this can be across different deliveries, but you must allow for a 16-day gap between appointments. So whether you're going to write it only in the test center, but you'd like to write a second time, you must allow for 16 days. And the same goes if you've taken it first online and then want to write it in a test center. For those of you considering the GMAT online, we offer appointments in rolling 6-month increments. So if you're currently looking to book an appointment and your date isn't showing, it could be that it's outside the 6-month window. Just keep checking back. And lastly, at this time, we are unable to offer the GMAT online to our candidates in mainland China, Iran, North Korea, Sudan, and Cuba due to regulatory restrictions. So let's talk a little bit about checking in and getting started online with the GMAT online experience. Most importantly, you want to make sure that you are staying up to date and checking in on mba.com/GMAT online. And of course, before your exam, you're going to make sure that you reviewed the ID requirements and have ensured that the ID that you used to register with can be used on test day. Make sure that you've checked and reviewed the system and workspace requirements for GMAT Online, and also make sure that you run the system check well in advance. And then finally, you'll be asked to install your secure browser. Pre-check again, and you're going to make sure that you've installed that latest secure browser. You're going to run that system check. Again, you can run it well in advance of your test date. And we're also going to make sure that your internet meets the requirements for a successful exam experience. You will also be asked to answer security questions that you enter during registration, and you'll agree to test taker rules. After you've completed those steps, you'll be then introduced to your proctor. And your proctor is going to check your photo ID and make sure that everything matches on your registration, as well as what's in front, in the information they provide prior to your sitting for the test. They're going to ask you to do a 360-degree scan of your desk space. And so you'll do that with your webcam, or if you're like me and you're on your laptop, you take your laptop and move it around. And just want to make sure that it matches the photos that you provided during the registration process. The proctor will then confirm that there are no other applications running on your computer. You'll then be ready to start the exam. The proctor will launch the exam. You as a candidate are required to keep your live video feed on. If you're going to be using a physical whiteboard to supplement your exam experience, you will need to show that to the proctor at the beginning, any breaks, and at the end of the exam. If you need help at any time, please raise your hand, or you're welcome to type into the chat box that's provided to you in the online format. Again, as I mentioned, I highly, highly encourage you to visit mba.com/GMAT online. Everything there is up to date and will help you make sure that your workstation as well as your system is compatible to be successful for the GMAT online. We really want to make sure that we can ensure a fair and secure test experience for our candidates that are testing online, as well as for the institutions that will be receiving those online test scores. And so you can see that these are just some of the many practices that we have in place to ensure that fair and secure test experience. So you can see that we've got ID verification, the security questions. Of course, we're going to lock down your browser. We do record your testing session, and of course, taking advantage of checking those whiteboards. And then after the exam, there's always the ability for us to do a video review and post-exam forensics should there be any issue with your exam experience. If you're choosing to write the GMAT online, you will preview your unofficial score at the end of the exam. That unofficial score will be that 200 to 800 point range score, and that will include your scores for your performance in quant, verbal, and integrated reasoning. The only score that will be included, of course, is your AWA. However, remember that your AWA score does not contribute to your overall exam score. It's just a subscore. So that score that you're seeing there at the preview of your end exam, that 200 to 800 point range, I like to refer to it as your unofficial official score. So when you see that, you can know that that's going to be the score that you can report to schools like Sauder. Then we like to deliver your official score to you within 7 business days. However, in some instances, it can take up to 20 business days. And you'll receive an email notification to log into your MBA.com portal to review your official score. Some things to keep in mind is that when you receive that email notification that your official scores are available, that means that you have 48 hours to take advantage of those 5 free score reports. And I really encourage you to take advantage of those. Each score report costs $35. So those 5 free score reports are a huge savings. But do make sure that you're logging in within that 48-hour period. If you do not log in with that 48-hour period, you lose the access to those free score sends. And then, of course, if you have additional scores or schools that you'd like to send your scores to, you can request an additional score report. And of course, that's where you'd pay that $35 fee. As I mentioned, you have the option to use a physical whiteboard. It has to be erasable. It can be no larger than 12 inches by 20 inches. You may have 2 markers and 1 eraser on your workspace. This is, if you've ever taken the GMAT before, this is the opportunity to, this complements the clear page notebook that's available to candidates in the test center. And so this is just an opportunity. I have heard from candidates that they use the physical whiteboard to do all of their notes and sketching, and then they'll also utilize the online whiteboard. And let me show you what that looks like. So the online whiteboard looks like this, and it's available for you to use for practice on MBA.com. We've also embedded it in all of our practice resources. And what I've heard from candidates is that they will use the online whiteboard to type notes into, and then they will use the physical whiteboard to do all of their scratch work for, say, quant and integrated reasoning. So just know that you have access to both. A big question that's always posed is, if I don't have a whiteboard, can I use paper? And unfortunately, the answer is no. You need to have that whiteboard that measures 12 by 20. Now, for those of you that are considering writing the GMAT in Test Center, let's talk a little bit about that experience. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you have a valid MBA.com account, and you can create one if you don't have one at MBA.com. And you'll go to GMAT and you'll select GMAT Test Center. From there, you'll walk through a couple of steps, and then you're going to get to this page where you can actually type in your postal zip code, and we will populate test centers that are in vicinity of either your home, office, or university. We partner with Pearson VUE to administer the GMAT. We have there are over 700 testing sites available globally. Some things to keep in mind when testing in a test center. You can select up to 3 test centers to compare. You can also then click here directly on details, and it will show you their testing calendar, what's available. I always encourage candidates to select the test time that works best for you. If you're not a morning person, don't sign up to take the GMAT in the morning. Some other pieces of advice that I like to use if you're considering the test center is that, as I mentioned, we partner with Pearson VUE, and Pearson VUE administers a lot of professional assessments. And so when you sit down at your testing desk in the test center and the person next to you stands up after 5 minutes, they haven't just completed the GMAT in 5 minutes. So I always encourage candidates to kind of like stay in your lane when you sit at your test desk and just focus on having a successful GMAT experience. Some other pieces of advice when it comes to testing in a test center is I like to recommend a dress rehearsal. So let's say you are scheduled to take the GMAT next Friday, the 27th of October. I would encourage you on this coming Friday to leave your home or office to travel to the test center that you've selected, whether that be by public transit, private car, shared taxi, whatever it may be. And then understand where you're going to be dropped off or where you need to park, and then physically walk into the building. Majority of our test centers are within large office complex. So I always encourage students to walk into the building, find out what level or floor the testing center is on, and then if possible, take the elevator up to that floor so you have a visual of what you should be expecting on test day. Just these steps again can relieve the stress on that test day morning or afternoon, because you know how long it's going to take you to get to that test center, you know where you need to get dropped off, where you need to park, and then of course you know exactly which floor the test center is located on. So once you get to the test center, or I should say, when you have decided that you're going to test in a test center and that you've gone ahead and you're going to register, similar steps to what we saw for those candidates that are thinking about taking the GMAT online. And so, of course, before the exam, you want to confirm your appointment. Make sure you have the correct date, time, and location. As we've talked about, make sure that you know how to get to that test center. And then be sure to check the items list on MBA.com of what you can bring to a test center and what you should leave behind. I always encourage candidates that less is more. Leave any technology, papers, books, notebooks, any of that sort in your car or at home. As you saw, you do have access. You have 2 optional 8-minute breaks, and at that time, you do have access to go to your locker. But if you pull out your phone to respond to a text message and a proctor sees that, they can deem that as cheating. If they see you pull out a book or a notebook or a piece of paper, that can be deemed as cheating and your exam will be canceled on the spot. And unfortunately, I've had that happen to some candidates. So please leave those items behind. Of course, you're welcome to bring in a bottle of water, a snack to have in that space. And then, of course, if you're a candidate that will be testing with accommodations, of course, you're welcome to bring in to the test center those items that you are approved to have during your exam time. So then you've checked all that out. With the pre-check, again, you want to make sure, double check again, your exact appointment time and location. You want to make sure that the ID that you registered with complies with the laws in the region in which you're taking the exam, that you'll be able to submit that when you check in. And then we recommend checking in anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes in advance of your exam time. I know it may seem like a lot, but trust me, it's a good way to get into the building, get settled, use the washroom if you need to, do the check-in process, and not feel rushed. And so keep that in mind. So you've gotten to the test center, and upon with check-in, you'll be introduced to a test administrator. They're going to check your photo ID. They're going to make sure that everything matches what you submitted in your registration. You're going to agree to test taker rules, and you're going to provide an electronic signature. And then we're going to take a photo, and that photo will be added to your official score report. And then we'll also ask you to complete a palm vein scan. Once that is complete, you will walk into the testing room. And the test administrator is going to provide you with these erasable note boards. The best way that I can explain it is that it looks like a notebook, but the pages are clear, or a notepad and the pages are clear. There's a special pen, so they won't smudge off. And so you just use those pages, again, similar to our candidates that are thinking about GMAT online, as they would a whiteboard. This is where you can write all of your notes and your scratch work. And as you need more note boards, you just raise your hand and the test administrator will bring them over to you. Once you're seated and you're all set, the test administrator will start your exam. And of course, if you need any assistance during your exam, just raise your hand and one of the administrators in the room will be able to assist you. For viewing scores in a test center, it's a little bit different from viewing them online. So if you're taking the GMAT in a test center, prior to starting the exam, you're going to be prompted to select up to 5 schools. And these 5 schools are going to receive your official score report. Not to worry, you don't need to know any special codes. You'll just type in, for example, you would just type in University of British Columbia, and all the programs at UBC that have a GMAT code, including all the business programs at Sauder, would appear, and you just click them off. As I mentioned, you're going to select up to 5 schools to receive your official score report. Those are going to be those 5 free score sends. At the end of the exam, you will preview you'll preview your unofficial score. So again, it's going to be 200 in the range of between 200 and 800 points, and it's going to account for your current performance in quant, verbal, and integrated reasoning. Of course, we can't provide you that AWA score yet, but that score that you're looking at is not going to change once you get that AWA score. So again, this is your unofficial official score, so that you would be able to call back to Nicole at Sauder and say, hey, Nicole, I got this score on my GMAT. I've made sure that my official scores are being sent your way. Please keep an eye out. Within the test center, if you decide that your performance wasn't as strong as you wanted it to be, or maybe you woke up with a migraine that morning, and you don't love your score, you can choose to cancel it. You have up to 72 hours. You can either cancel it in the test center right on the spot, or you have 72 hours to make that decision. Even if you cancel, you still always have access to your scores. They're still valid for 4 years and 11 months, and they can always be reinstated. My piece of advice here, though, is to not cancel. We see a number of candidates that will self-select themselves out of this process because they think their score is not strong enough, when in reality it actually is. So I would actually encourage you to go ahead and accept your score, and then reach out to Nicole or in the team at Sauder and say, hey, I took the GMAT on Saturday, wasn't feeling so great. This is what I got for my score. What should I do next? And there's probably a very good chance that they're going to say, score's just fine. Or they'll be able to coach you on what the next steps would be best in order to have the most optimal application for yourself. If you do accept your score in the test center, we'll actually print out a copy for you. And then, of course, your official score report will be made available to you within 7 business days, or it could take up to 20. And then, of course, if you'd like to send any additional score reports, you may do that by logging into your MBA.com account and, of course, paying that fee for those additional score reports. We have discussed how the GMAT came to be, the value of it in the application process to graduate business programs. We have discussed the question types and sections that you can expect to experience on the GMAT. And, of course, then what your test day would be like either online or in a test center. So let's talk a little bit about how you can prepare for the GMAT. I'd encourage you, if you have access to your phone right now, to go ahead and to grab this QR code. It's going to bring you to our official prep products at MBA.com. And so just a couple of points here. Of course, our official guide, also known as OG, is available right now for candidates for 2023-2024. And of course, you have access to purchase our practice exams and practice question packs. Anything that you purchase on MBA.com is going to be an ebook. If you prefer a hardcover book to be able to, make notes and whatnot, we do have an Amazon storefront where we're able to ship you a book. Either way, whether you're purchasing through MBA.com or Amazon, you'll also receive access to our e-learning platform, so you can do a lot of prep on the go. What I really like, and what I hope you'll take advantage of, is our free prep resources. And one of that includes our official 8-week study planner. So if you click here, scan the QR code here, you'll get access to the free study planner, as well as 2 free practice exams and a question pack. I encourage candidates to use one of those free exams to identify a benchmark of your performance. Take about 3.5 hours in a quiet space with no distractions, turn off your phone, no calculator, and really take it seriously and allow that to inform you of where you need to focus your prep. And then, of course, you can use the 8-week study planner to help guide you. And of course, keep in mind that this 8-week study planner is completely made for you. So if you need to take 2 weeks to get through week 1, that's totally fine. Make it your own. A couple of things to keep in mind with prep. We do know that there is a direct correlation between the hours spent preparing and the overall GMAT score total. So something to keep in mind there. Of course, you also want to keep in mind of what's your timeline? You may be trying to meet a deadline within the next 6 weeks. You may also not be thinking that you'll be applying until perhaps fall 2024 or fall 2025. And so I always encourage candidates to kind of, think about what's the date when you want to submit an application or enroll, and then work backwards to plan out your prep materials. Thinking about, what's your learning style? Are you someone that can sit independently and, really be focused for a couple of hours each day or a couple hours on the weekend? Again, how disciplined are you? Making sure that you're creating objectives for each study session so that you are completing items. And then also, how comfortable are you with the subject matter and question types? Do you have a quant background, or are you more of a poet? It will really determine, their ability to self-teach. And then, it's also, as it mentions here, and I just touched upon this, but it's really important to make sure that you are simulating test center conditions, right? So that there's quiet space, that you have learning objectives so that you can move through 12 integrated reasoning questions in 30 minutes, or successfully write a response to an AWA question in 30 minutes. So all things to keep in mind. And then, of course, use that 8-week study planner as a way to guide you. So as we come to the conclusion of today's session, I just want to be able to highlight some, or leave you with some test day best practices. So first and foremost, as we've talked about extensively, plan your logistics in advance. So again, if you're going to be testing in a test center, look up your directions, map your route, know where you're going to be parking or getting dropped off. If you are testing online, make sure that your workspace is appropriately set and you have checked the system requirements and have the installed secure browser. Either way, whether you're in a test center or online, make sure that you're arriving early and that you have the appropriate identification needed to get your exam started. Make sure that you're reading each question carefully and thoroughly. So before answering each question, make sure that you're determining exactly what's being asked, and then try to eliminate the wrong answers and select the best choice. With the GMAT, you must answer each question in order to get to the next question. And so with that, you want to make sure that you are giving yourself enough time to get on to the next question, but also that you're confirming the answer that you're certain about. And so if you happen to get to a point where like, I'm just kind of unsure, I'm not 100% sure, go ahead and guess. Because you want to make sure that you're moving through the test, and you want to make sure it's more important for you to complete each section and have a couple of answers incorrect than to not be able to complete each section. There's going to be a clock. It's going to be on screen, on display, both in a test center and online. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on that, that you're aware of the remaining time, so that you know that you're moving through each question with enough time so that you'll finish each section completely. And if you can, remember to relax. As we've talked about, this is just one piece of the application pie. And so remember that there is an opportunity to always supplement your application in other ways. There's always the opportunity to take the GMAT again if you'd like to. And of course, remember that the admissions committees that you're interested in applying to are here to support you and to guide you and to coach you. So please do use them as a resource. In the days leading up to your GMAT, make sure that you're getting lots of good sleep, staying hydrated, and eating meals so that you're ready to go for your exam. So as I mentioned, we have some changes coming in Q4. The GMAT is changing. And I'm really excited about this, and I can't wait to share this next experience with you when we meet again. The GMAT we're calling right now GMAT Focus Edition, has been made with you, the candidate, in mind. So you can see here that the GMAT is changing from being 4 sections to 3 45-minute sections. We are reducing the prep time that you'll need, right? So we think that you only need about 6 weeks of prep time, and there's no essay. You'll also see that we're giving you a lot more flexibility in the experience with the GMAT. So question review and edit. So while you'll still have to answer each question in order to get to the next question, you're able to bookmark those questions that you're a little unsure of and go back and re-edit them if you have time left in the section. We're giving you a lot more opportunity with select section order. It'll really be like choose your own adventure. And as far as your score preview and your score report, we're really enhancing that as well at no additional cost. And of course, GMAT Focus will be available to you either online or in a testing center. And what's really great is we're going to be able to provide you, the candidate, as well as the schools that you're considering applying to, really reliable and valid predictors of what your success will look like in the classroom. And we've also created more applicable content that is going to be used in the classroom and beyond, especially with our recalibrated data insights section. So we have lots of information to share with you about GMAT Focus. You can find out more on MBA.com. And as I mentioned, you are eligible to register for either GMAT or GMAT Focus Edition. And the GMAT will continue to be offered to candidates until January 31st, 2024. Just want to give you a little bit of what you can expect with the GMAT Focus Edition. So that's here on the left in the yellow. And of course, the GMAT exam, which we've just extensively talked about, is highlighted in the blue. The GMAT Focus Edition and GMAT exam are still going to be accepted globally at over 7,700 programs in 2,400 schools, and will still be available to you both online or in a test center. But you can see in the structure that we're reducing the number of questions, but it's still going to be question adaptive. So it's going to meet you where you are performance-wise. The score scale is changing. We need a way to be able to differentiate between the two exams that are being submitted to schools. So if you're thinking about GMAT exam, that will be a score of 200 to 800. GMAT Focus Edition will be a score range of 205 to 805. You can see that we have saved nearly an hour with GMAT Focus Edition. So really excited about that. And then instead of 2 optional 8-minute breaks, we're going to offer you 1 optional 10-minute break. The sections can be completed in any order you choose. And then, of course, you have unlimited review, edit, and can make changes to up to 3 answers per section. With the GMAT Focus Edition for your scores, you will actually select who you'd like to send your scores to after you receive your official score, both online and in the test center. You'll still have the opportunity to attempt the GMAT Focus Edition 5 times in a year or 8 times in a lifetime. And this does count across test delivery. And if you've already taken the GMAT, that will also count towards your lifetime attempts. If you're a candidate that will be seeking accommodations, we will be able to offer them to you. I just encourage you to request those accommodations before registering for the GMAT. And then lastly, there will be no changes to the cost of the GMAT Focus Edition. The charges will remain on par with the current charges for the GMAT based on country and currency. So here's where we're at. GMAT Focus Edition Prep has been in the market since June. And of course, we announced that registration is now available as well for GMAT Focus Edition, and candidates will be taking the first GMAT Focus Edition exam globally on November 7th. And then, of course, we will sunset the current GMAT on January 31st, 2024. But of course, GMAT Focus Edition will then just become the GMAT, and will still be available to candidates globally. A couple of things before we sign off together today. Business Fundamentals is a great tool, whether you're thinking about business school now or down the line. These are courses that you can purchase, and they are self-paced, about 15 to 19 hours. But if you're really looking to strengthen your foundation in either accounting, finance, or statistics, these are available to you to review on MBA.com. We have many business school partners that are actually utilizing these to help candidates have the confidence before they get into the classroom. And then lastly, if you are just beginning your B-School journey, I encourage you to visit MBA.com and opt in to our free search service called Grad Select. This is an opportunity for you to create a profile and be matched with business programs globally. And with that, I really thank you for your time and attention for learning about the GMAT today. And I wish you all the best in your B-School journey. And at this time, Nicole, happy to take out any questions that we may have received.
Perfect. If it's okay, I'll just go through a few reminders on our side, because I think it might generate some questions too, and then we'll jump into questions. Yeah. And I already saw one in the chat that I'll answer as well. So, okay, so I'll just go through a few slides here for folks that are on the call that are specifically thinking of applying to UBC Sauder. You may be wondering, how does this translate to what the requirements that we have are? So you can see here that we have our GMAT scores that are admission requirements, and then our competitive edge scores. As Kailin was mentioning though, please reach out to us if you've done the GMAT or you're planning to, and you get a score that's a little bit different than what you were expecting or what you're hoping for. Please chat with us. As Kailin has been mentioning, there is that holistic view that we're looking at when we're looking at a candidate's profile. So please contact us, even if you're not meeting these scores, but this is a good kind of guideline to go by that we tend to see from our applicants who are successful in getting into our program. And we'll also mention too the different programs that are currently accepting applications. You can see the list here. We have a full suite of full-time MBAN, all sorts of different degree options. And so if you have any questions about those, I'd be happy to answer them as well. Although the focus today is a little bit more on the GMAT. I did want to mention that those are the different programs that you may be thinking of applying to if you're thinking of applying to UBC Sauder. And then I also just want to mention too our upcoming deadlines. We just had a deadline pass yesterday, October 17th, but our next round, which is our second round deadline, is coming up on January 9th. So still a good amount of time. A common question we get is if folks haven't written their GMAT just yet, but the deadline is coming. That's okay, just let us know. We love to see if you've booked your exam already. If you let us know the date, we can put your application on pause, and we don't want that to discourage you from submitting your application by a certain deadline so that you can be considered. And you'll note that asterisk there, that if you do think you might be eligible for a GMAT or GRE waiver request, which more information is available on our website, because you've been able to kind of demonstrate some other those competencies in other ways, there's certain deadlines you would need to meet to do that. And then I will just move along to this piece here. Our scholarships is another common question we get, folks wondering how they can apply for scholarships and awards, and there is automatic consideration for that. So happy to kind of point people to the right information on our website. Each program has their own scholarship and award, but it is automatic consideration. And a good amount. And then some upcoming events that I'll just leave up here if you wanted to take a screenshot or a QR code. We've got lots of program-specific offerings, some sessions being run by our current students, which you'll see there with the student life focus sessions, which is really wonderful. We have a great team of student ambassadors being able to speak to their experience in the programs that they're in, but also I'm sure they'd be happy to share their experience in writing the GMAT or the GRE or anything like that. So that's a really wonderful opportunity. So I will just share the contact information and then we'll pop over to questions. I'll leave that up for a second too, in case anyone wants to take a screenshot of that. Kailin, I did see one question coming through the chat in terms of GMAT and the difference between GMAT and GRE. And I believe that there's a resource that perhaps you might have. I don't know if there's a link to share that does a bit of a comparison, but I'll just say on the Sauder side of things, for us, it doesn't matter which test you take the one that feels right for you, that makes the most sense once you've kind of compared the differences. But yeah, maybe Kailin, if you want to speak to any of that or share any resources that you have on the differences between the two tests.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do so. Kenrick, in response to your question, there is no preference from a partner school perspective. We have convened almost 500 schools globally and school professionals globally, and test prep organizations. So it's quite extensive, the amount of outreach that we've had to inform folks of the GMAT Focus Edition, and our school partners are on board and supportive of the GMAT Focus Edition. So there is no preference to which version you need to submit. All of our school partners are well versed and understand how both exams work and how to evaluate candidates with each of those scores. Regarding Stella, to your question, yes, you are correct. There is, as I mentioned, there is a different score scale. That's 205 to 805, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, as we know, a GMAT score is valid for 5 years. So for the next 5 years, candidates will be able to submit both a GMAT Focus Edition or a GMAT score to institutions. And folks like Nicole and her team are going to have to be able to distinguish between which one's being submitted so they can evaluate appropriately. You'll also notice that, yes, the score scale is very different. And the rationale for that is many reasons. While we haven't added or changed the question types on GMAT Focus Edition, we have recalibrated the construct and have also taken into account a more global test taker pipeline. And so what we're really trying to do is to reduce the score inflation that we have seen over the last several years. And so this is really to realign and for these to be more true scores. What I don't want you to be nervous or concerned about is that if you've taken the GMAT before, and let's say hypothetically you scored a 700, and then you took the GMAT Focus Edition and you scored a 655, those are still they're very similar, and they actually fall within the same competitive percentile. And so please rest assured that you have not declined in your performance, but you have actually stayed, quite competitive. And so you'll see that a lot of our school partners are going to start speaking to you about competitive percentiles and not so much an average score. All of these resources are available to you on MBA.com. We have the percentile concordance charts that you can review. There are some forms that you can also review of the GMAT versus GMAT Focus. And if you're torn between, do I take the GMAT Focus or the GRE, we also have a form for you there as well. And so Nicole, actually what I'll do is I'll send over those resources so you can share this out with those that attended and joined us today.
Fantastic.
And then lastly, to find a test center near you, you're going to want to make sure that you've created an account on MBA.com, that you have, you go through the process, and then you'll be prompted to type in your postal zip code, where you can then will populate a list of test centers within the vicinity of either your home, your office, or your work.
Fantastic. I'll just jump in to share that on the GMAT versus GMAT Focus, to confirm what you were saying, particularly in Sauder's case, it's either is fine. We won't be kind of looking differently, so there's not a preferred option. It's really just what makes the most sense for you, as well as obviously timing wise as well. So yeah, not to worry. We'd be considering equally. There was also a follow-up question around the latest time to submit a result of an exam. And as I mentioned, ideally you're having it in by the time you're submitting your application and by our deadlines that we posted. But I think it's more on a case-by-case basis to let us know and work with our recruitment managers to give us a heads up. I would say really not too long after, because your application is going to be sitting on pause and on hold, and we really want to make sure you're getting assessed in a timely manner, both for your sake, so you have time to hear a response and plan your life accordingly, but also so that you're not missing out on great scholarship opportunities and all sorts of things that we kind of see moving along as we go through the cycle. So it's more of a case-by-case basis, but it's certainly something you can flag for us, and we really prefer folks within a few weeks, or at least have their exam date set, and we'll send us the result as soon as it's available. So yeah, over to you, Kailin. I think there's a few more coming in.
Absolutely. So if you've been preparing for the GMAT, I believe that it'll be very easy for you to transition to the GMAT Focus. As I mentioned, we haven't changed the question types. We have removed the essay, so that's nice. You don't have to worry about preparing for that anymore. And then a couple of other things. We've removed any questions from quant that focus that have a geometric, feel to them. And then in reading comprehension, we've also in verbal, we've also removed sentence correction problems as well. The only big difference is that you're going to see where, as I mentioned, integrated reasoning is now known as data insights, as we recalibrated that section. You're still going to have the exact same question types, so like table analysis and whatnot, but you'll also find that in that section, we'll move the data sufficiency questions there. So hopefully it feels more concise and more appropriate. So I would say that if you've been preparing for the GMAT, it'll be very easy for you to transition to GMAT Focus. I would encourage you to download the free prep resources that are available to you on MBA.com, so you can get a feel of there's practice exams on there, so you can feel what the flow feels like and what the questions look like. But it will be very easy to transition on, I believe. Lastly, if you are kind of like, which one do I take? I think at this point, I would encourage you to go ahead and take let me tell you this. If you are ready to, if you're looking to submit an application, for Sauder, let's say, I think, Nicole, did I say your next deadline is January? Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I mean, that would give you plenty of time where you could still go ahead and prep and take either the GMAT or GMAT Focus Edition. I would say that if you're thinking about submitting application materials anytime beyond early January, then I would encourage you to focus on taking the GMAT Focus.
Fantastic. Sorry, I didn't realize if we responded. Is there a way to find test centers through a link, or do we want to include that in the chat, Kailin?
Yes. So you don't need to register, and I apologize. I'll also send that to you, Nicole, as a follow-up. I will do it with it's a little weird. It feels like you have to get through a couple of pages in order to be able to access it. We're going to ask you to agree to agree into it. You are not by agreeing to that, you are not registering for the GMAT, so don't be thrown off. But I will send you the link and you can work your way through it, but you'll be able to see where our test center, where your test centers are located near you.
Great. Wonderful. And then there was a question from Stilla. If they haven't taken the GMAT before, would you recommend the new GMAT Focus? I guess, again, the decision. I'm not sure if we responded to that one. And yeah, feel free to jump in on that one. I'll jump into the next one just after.
Yeah, so yes, you're correct. So there's two modalities in which to take the GMAT. You can physically go to a test center where it will be administered to you on a computer, or you have the option to take the GMAT online, which you will take on a computer, but you'll either take at home or at your university or in your workplace. So either way, the exam is administered to you on a computer. It will just determine if you're in a test center or if you are doing it online in the comfort of either your home or office.
Wonderful. Great. I see here a question about what Sauder will accept in terms of multiple times and whether it's an average score. So Kyle, I think the best answer to that would be that we'll take the highest score, which I would hope you would like as well. I think it's fine if someone rewrites a GMAT. It's really just sometimes folks have, as Kailin was mentioning, like an off day, or they're just getting used to the kind of format. And so we would really be taking what's within that period of the window. I believe it's 5 years, and what's the highest score. So not to worry, no need for us to take the average. But if you wanted to take it multiple times, you're very welcome to. Over to you, Kailin. There's a few more coming in that are more specific to GMAT, test centers, and TAT.
So I'm not sure, Kashav, what your question is there, the TAT for results, that question. So if you could clarify, that'd be helpful. And then Sue, I don't have a view of GMAT Focus versus GMAT thus far. Something to keep in mind, the GMAT, right, is only the total score is based on your performance in 2 sections, quant and verbal. On GMAT Focus Edition, your performance is going to be based on your 3 sections, data insights, quant, and verbal. And so it's really like comparing apples to oranges, and it can't really be done. But we know that there can be, we've created these concordance charts, right? The highest score you get on GMAT Focus, of course, is an 805, and it's 800 on the GMAT. Right now, all of our, we've used 5 years of simulated test data to create our concordance charts for GMAT Focus. So of course, you'll start to see some of that ebb and flow a little bit once we have official scores available to us, and those will be available beginning after November 7th.
We just have a few more minutes here, so maybe we'll take maybe 1 or 2 more questions. I see there's a few more here, Kailin, if you're able to see in the chat. I think your access might have just changed. I know.
Yeah, let me see. I've still got it did. No worries.
No problem. It's good you have two logged in.
Yeah, 2 logins. Yeah. So the question that I'm seeing on my end is, how early can one get results for Focus Edition? So much like you do with the GMAT, you will receive your unofficial score when you complete the assessment. It'll be made available to you on screen, and you'll see it. We're no longer providing printouts at a test center, so you'll just have to take a mental note. And then your official score report will be delivered to you in 3 to 5 days, which is an improvement upon the 7 days. But keep in mind that you're going to receive a notification to log into your MBA.com portal, because when you receive that email, that starts to clock on 48 hours. And within that 48 hours, you're able to then go ahead and take advantage of your 5 free score sends, whether you tested online or in a test center.
Great. Perfect. And then I think we'll just take the last question here. And in the meantime, if you want to put any contact details, Kailin, for if folks have more questions, maybe just in the chat, because I think there's still a few more coming in. But Keshav, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Please go ahead. You'll be the last one.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, Kailin. Actually, I had a very specific question. I come to know about some GMAT coupons from an individual, and he was offering me and claiming that it will be as good as 50% to the original cost of the exam. So I just wanted to know, are they valid, or it is something sort of fishy kind of thing?
Oh, excuse me. That sounds a little fishy to me. And so if you could go ahead and perhaps you could, if you wouldn't mind, if you could email Nicole, and then Nicole will connect you and I, and we can do a little bit of investigation in there for you, because I hate for you or anyone else on this call to be provided with information that is not fair, and then could have an impact on your assessment.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kailin. That's really, really good advice. And yeah, I just put my contact details in there, and I'm happy to pass along anything that makes sense, as well as answer any questions that come through around UBC Sauder and our program. So I think we'll end there. I really want to thank Kailin, especially for all the great information. I hope you've put some nerves at ease. And for those that are about to write or have that plan coming up, I wish you all the best of luck with your upcoming GMAT or GMAT Focus exam. And to everyone, I hope you have a wonderful day. It's been a pleasure. And take care, and we hope to see applications coming in from you soon. All right, take care.
Thanks everyone. Take good care. Bye-bye.